If you wouldn't mind sharing, Josh, what are you afraid of?
Choosing the wrong career field.
Choosing the wrong career or field. Why?
I feel like you're just wasting a lot of time.
And you're taking on loans, right? Money you're going to have to pay back, and you spend all this time and effort. Yeah, that makes sense. That's reasonable. Miguel, what are you afraid of?
Death and being average.
Being average. Why being average?
I don't know. I just want to live a meaningful life full of adventure and
You don't think you could do that if you were average?
not in the same time and having a 9 to 5.
What are you thinking of, like going on awesome trips and stuff, and you're thinking, well, I need money to do that, right? Stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. Aspen, what are you afraid of?
One of my biggest fears is death as well, but it's like not like the actual thing. It's like
Okay.
because I'm not like religious or anything. It's like what's after.
What's going to happen? Yeah, that's a question we all have, right? What is going to happen after we die? Well, your professor is also afraid of things. Probably a lot of things that you're afraid of as well. Disappointing my parents, not living up to my own ideals or standards. But there's something I'm afraid of more than anything else, and perhaps it doesn't even come close. I've been blessed to excel at almost any academic pursuit I've engaged in. School came easily to me. I didn't have to study very hard. I did very well on tests. But I'm afraid of what all philosophers are afraid of, if they really think about this question. Death, sure. But what's something a philosopher can't live without? Knowledge? Close, yeah? Meaning? Their mind. I've lost 2 grandparents to Alzheimer's. I didn't recognize them at the end of their lives. They, by all accounts, weren't the same person they were when they passed. Knowing this runs in my family is terrifying. Because what can I do if I don't have my mind and my memories? I certainly can't work out the kind of problems and issues that I'm interested in, right? I wouldn't be able to continue on teaching or in my career. Losing my mind is a big fear. Well, why did I ask you to share all that? Well, it's because fear plays a huge role in our lives. We're held back by fear. Sometimes we're motivated by fear. Oftentimes, though, our fears prevent us from being the kind of people we really want to be and living the lives that we want to live. Fear is especially pertinent to the dialogue that we're going to be looking at today by Plato, his Apology. Fear, and especially fear of death, is a central theme that runs through this dialogue because the stakes for Socrates are so great. When we sit back and we kind of reflect on this dialogue and we interrogate it deliberately and intently, it's clear that Plato wants us to reflect on fear and the place that fear has in our lives. It should ask us to reflect on, well, what is the worst fate possible for us as human beings, these creatures of emotion and reason? Is it dying? Is it losing our minds? Is it suffering a lot or feeling a lot of pain? What perhaps should we fear the most? And consequently, how should we live our lives? If Socrates and his student Plato thought that this philosophy thing was so important, well, then they obviously have views about the kind of place that it should have in our lives. And that's what we're going to be investigating today. And if you seriously, apply yourself in this class, I think you'll come to your own answers and a better understanding of, well, what philosophy can do for you and the places that critical thinking can take you. So, let's go ahead. Let's jump into Plato's Apology. Now, did anybody read the little short blurb before the text? It was like a little summary. Yeah? What is an apology? Plato wrote this. Is Plato apologizing for something? Did he hurt his mom?
It was said that it's not us being sorry, it's more like a defense. It's more like him explaining himself.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We get our word apology from this Greek word apologia. But it didn't always mean, saying sorry to your dad for breaking his lawnmower or something. It's a defense, often a defense in legal proceedings. Because the Athenians had, a similar civil system like we have, where if somebody's accused of something, well, they'll be brought before a jury and they'll be able to defend themselves, give an explanation or excuses for their actions. And that's what this text is. It's a speech that's in defense of something. Now, what is that something? Well, this is Plato's literary representation of what Socrates may have said to his accusers. It was written years later after the death of his mentor Socrates, so we can't be sure that these were actually Socrates' words. But presumably, Plato knew Socrates pretty well, so he probably knew what he was going to say. And what is Socrates doing in this text? Well, he's defending himself against his accusers. Plato is the author, so Plato obviously had his own motivations in writing what he did here. And I think he's trying to do three things. Because those who would have heard of Socrates during this time, well, there were probably a bunch of rumors that were flying around. Oh yeah, this weird old guy ended up being accused of offending the gods and corrupting the youth. Well, Plato is trying to defend Socrates' honor and actions in this dialogue. He's trying to say, no, Socrates didn't do the things he was accused of and ultimately indicted of. He goes on to try to defend Socrates' method of questioning people, of engaging in philosophy. And he tries to defend philosophy also as a way of life. Remember that the Greeks during this time were heavily influenced by the works of Homer and his poetry, by those ideals and values and ways of life, where manliness was really prioritized, and courage and glorious death on the battlefield, strength, military prowess, that was what was important. But Plato saw, in being a disciple of Socrates, the kind of life someone could lead if they dove into philosophy instead. If they tried to live with wisdom, tried to live attaining knowledge. And so we can also see this text as a defense of philosophy as a way of life. Philosophy in general. Now, what else is going on in this text? Well, I've already said it, but as you should know from our last class, Socrates was accused of some pretty serious things. The Greeks being a polytheistic society with a pantheon of gods and goddesses that they believed mediated things in the world and created things and made stuff happen. Well, Socrates was accused of impiety. That is, of offending these Olympian gods. People thought that he was being heretical, that he was undermining their religion, perhaps that he was speaking badly about the gods. Similarly, he was also accused of corrupting the youth of Athens, corrupting them morally, psychologically, socially. Socrates, of course, rejects that he's doing any of this. He doesn't think he's doing any of this. Plato likely didn't think he did any of this either. But these were the serious charges that were brought against him. And so what we have in Plato's Apology is basically Socrates' defense speech. And in it, he makes a number of bold claims. He rejects the accusations against him, and he says, on the contrary, I haven't been heretical. I haven't been offending the gods or living antithetical to their wills. Rather, I've been following the gods' lead. Now, why might Socrates say this? Well, for a number of reasons. First, recall that oracle at Delphi thing that we mentioned last class. What is that? What's an oracle?
Or the message or spirit from the gods, but telling Socrates about something, but not how to go about it.
Right. Yeah, you've jumped ahead a little bit, which is good. An oracle is basically a message from the gods. One example of this might be like a prophecy. Greek generals, for example, might visicle the priestess at a temple and ask, what are we supposed to do about this upcoming battle? What's going to happen? And probably more often than not, the priestess would give them a message, apparently from the gods. Well, as we know, apparently Socrates heard a message. That message said, no one in Athens is wiser than Socrates. Recall that this greatly confused him. He didn't understand it. He didn't think it was true. But yet the gods can't be wrong. So what did he do? Well, he basically devoted the rest of his life to trying to figure out what this means. Right? What does this message mean? Now, one thing that probably got him in really hot water in the first place was when he admitted to having this thing called a daimonion inside of him. What is that? What's a daimonion? Yeah, it's, what would you call it? Something like a voice. Some people think it may have been a spirit. Some people may have thought, well, really, when he says that, he's just talking about his own conscience that's telling him about what's right and wrong. In any case, he claimed to have this thing inside of him that not a lot of people were really talking about or claimed that they had. So, of course, those in power at the time would think, this dude's being heretical, man. He says he has like a spirit inside of him that tells him how to live. This dude's crazy, right? But nonetheless, in Socrates' own mind, he thought that the presence of this thing inside of him was from the gods. The gods wouldn't err, they wouldn't go wrong. And he learned throughout his life that this voice would step in and tell him to not do something. And whenever he followed it, his life turned out well. So he said he was going to follow this thing. No, rather than being heretical and corrupting the youth and being vicious, Socrates asserts that, no, he's been trying to become good and wise. He's been trying to become a good person. Now, how did he do this? Well, he did it in a way that pissed a lot of people off. In trying to figure out what the oracle meant and trying to become a better person himself, what did he do? What did he do around Athens? Question people? Did that make them feel good? Why not? It did what? Okay. Embarrass them, right? Yeah. It embarrassed them. It revealed that, well, they claim to have knowledge about all these things like justice and what's good and how to live. And when Socrates pressed them on it, they would come to the inevitable conclusion that they really didn't know what the hell they were talking about, right? Their beliefs were becoming destabilized.
Why didn't the daimonion tell them not to do that.
Do what? Oh, live that way?
To like question, to get such a bad reputation.
Well, Socrates would say, I don't know why the daimonian didn't step in and tell me I shouldn't question people. But the fact that it didn't step in mean I was on the right path. We may never know why. In any case, he revealed people's shortcomings, and this embarrassed them. It made them feel insecure. It threatened those in power in some sense. Socrates claims to be, on a mission to figure out what the message means and to become good himself. But what's lurking in the background of this is that, why did he question people? Well, it's because he had a very philosophical view of things. He thought that, look, you can't become a good person and you can't do good things unless you have knowledge and understanding of that stuff in the first place. So he was trying to figure that out. What does it mean to be good? What is justice? How do we live a virtuous life? And so he was, as the texts call him, Athens' gadfly, stinging people awake out of their misconceptions and the sleep of their self-evident beliefs. Obviously, as I said earlier, this pissed a lot of people off. But the day of reckoning has come. After doing this for a while and convincing somehow, probably without a lot of desire of his own, a following, getting a bunch of students to follow him, those in power saw that Socrates was a threat. They didn't like what he was doing, and so they charged him. As we know, according to the story, Socrates ends up getting indicted. But looking at his defense speech, I think, is still valuable because it can help us work out some of these questions ourselves. And perhaps what the value of philosophy is for our own lives. So, let's go ahead and read some of this. Let's take a look at what Socrates has to say. Okay, could I get someone to read just the first 3 sentences? Go for it.
I do not know, men of Athens, how my accusers affected you. As for me, I was almost carried away and inspired myself. So persuasively did they speak. And yet hardly anything of what they said is true. Of the many lies they told, one in particular surprised me, namely that you should be careful not to be deceived by an accomplished speaker like me.
Good. That they were not ashamed to be immediately proved wrong by the facts, when I show myself not to be an accomplished speaker at all, that I thought was the most shameless on their part. Unless indeed they call an accomplished speaker the man who speaks the truth. If they mean that, I would agree that I am an orator, but not after their manner. For indeed, as I say, practically nothing they said was true. From me you will hear the whole truth, though, not by Zeus, gentlemen, expressed in embroidered and stylized phrases like theirs, but things spoken at random and expressed in the first words that come to mind. For I put my trust in the justice of what I say. And let none of you expect anything else. It would not be fitting at my age, as it might be for a young man, to toy with words when I appear before you. So what is Socrates saying here? How does he start his defense off? Yeah.
That he's going to tell his side of the story and the truth, and he's not going to try to confuse them with fancy words. He's going to tell it straight up.
Exactly. He's going to tell it straight up, right? Look, I'm not an accomplished speaker like these guys who have a bunch of practice giving speeches in courts like these. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I'm going to give you my side of the story. What do we call when somebody uses words in a certain way to persuade others, regardless of the truth or not? Rhetoric. Socrates says he's not going to use rhetoric. I will not use rhetoric to persuade you. Rather, I'm going to tell it like it is. Right? Okay, good. Now, what does he go on to say? One thing I do ask and beg of you, gentlemen, if you hear me making my defense in the same kind of language as I am accustomed to use in the marketplace, by the bankers' tables, where many of you have heard me and elsewhere, do not be surprised or create a disturbance on that account. The position is this. This is my first appearance in a law court at the age of 70. I am therefore simply a stranger to the manner of speaking here. Just as if I were really a stranger, you would certainly excuse me if I spoke in that dialect and manner in which I had been brought up. So too, my present request seems a just one, for you to pay no attention to my manner of speech, be it better or worse, but to concentrate your attention on whether what I say is just or not. For the excellence of a judge lies in this, as that of a speaker lies in telling the truth. Okay, so then what does he say? Emma.
To not use like his manner of speech against him. Like,
Yeah.
Don't dismiss like uncredible just because the way it's.
Right. We are not the best speakers in the world, right? People might, think we're insulting them because we can't say something properly. We try to improve our manner of speaking when we have to do something like an interview or some other high-stakes thing like that. But this is the first time Socrates is ever appearing in court, and he has to defend himself. He doesn't know how to use fancy rhetoric. So what does he say? Don't pay attention to my manner of speaking, but what? Reason. The content of my speech, whether it's true or just. Don't be put off if I'm a little clumsy, okay? Instead, what should they do? Pursue not whether he's saying things fancily or persuasively, but what? Pursue what? The truth, right? The truth of his words, the content of his speech. Good. Now it's funny, right? Because Socrates says he's not going to use any rhetoric. Well, wouldn't you say he's using some rhetoric here and kind of laying the groundwork for his own defense, right? The truth is what matters, gentlemen. Don't be put off if I'm a clumsy speaker. Well, maybe we just can't help but use rhetoric. Okay. Can I get someone to read the next paragraph? Otherwise, I'll throw a ball at your face. Go for it, Xavier.
It is right for me, gentlemen, to defend myself first against the first lying accusation made against me and my first accusers, and then against the later accusations and the later accusers. There have been many who have accused me too for many years now, and none of their accusations are true. These I fear much more than I fear
Anytus.
and his friend, though they too are formidable. These earlier ones, however, are more so gentlemen. They got hold of most of you from childhood, persuaded you, and accused me quite falsely, saying that there is a man called Socrates, the white man, the seer of all things in the sky and below the earth, who makes the worse arguments the stronger. Those who spread that rumor, gentlemen, are my dangerous accusers, for their hearers believe that
readily believe them, some of you being children and adolescents, and they won their case by default as there was no defense.
Okay. So, what does Socrates say here? Yeah. He has like two different sets of accusers, right? There are the later accusers who are accusing him of this stuff, later in his life, more recently. And then there are the earlier accusers. What's up with the earlier accusers?
They're saying he's like a student in all things, like in the sky and below the earth. And they can make a bad argument to a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, so what is he denying right there? Making the bad argument the better one. Who would do that? If you think back to our first class this week, what kind of group of people would try to make the worst argument the stronger? Yeah?
The sophists.
The sophists, yes. Can anybody explain why? What were the sophists doing? What was their goal? What were they about? One more?
They were teaching rhetoric on how to manipulate people instead of teaching the truth.
Right. The sophists, recall, were men who went from different Greek city-state to Greek city-state, charging people a fee to teach them how to use words persuasively, regardless of whether or not those words are the truth. And a lot of young men jumped at the opportunity. Why? Well, because they came from aristocratic, wealthy families. They could afford the fee. But also being able to persuade people of things would have been really useful in the court of law, right? It would have been really useful in their political careers. But he rejects the accusations, Socrates does, right? He rejects that he's a sophist, somebody who makes the worse argument the stronger. But why does he say, maybe I should put it like this. How were his early accusers persuaded to think he was this bad sophist guy who was corrupting people?
Because, when they were kids, they were taught that way, that people that do that are sophists. So now when they see Socrates, oh, I know that this is this, so therefore it's this.
Right, exactly. The people who didn't like Socrates got at those people when they were young and impressionable, right? They've been poisoned against Socrates since they were children. So Socrates is really going to defend himself here. Well, he has a Herculean task in front of him, right? He has to somehow get around years of conditioning and rumors. People being poisoned against him, thinking he's a sophist, thinking he's a heretic, ever since they were kids. No, he says, the charges against me are false. You have been deceived, and I'm going to try to lay it out for you. So he rejects two important things in these lines. The first, is that he's not a sophist, right? He's not someone who charges a fee to talk with people. Because that is what the sophists would do. They would say, look, you want to be educated on knowing how to use words persuasively? Give me some money and then you can hang out with me. Then I'll give you private lessons. Okay? And no doubt Plato would have saw him as a philosopher and not a sophist as well. Because the sophists, a lot of the philosophy-minded people thought during this time, were underhanded, They leaned into rhetoric rather than the truth. They perhaps cheated people out of their money. Now, what's going on with this? A student of all things in the sky and below the earth. What do you think he's mentioning there or alluding to there?
A satire that was written about him that said he did all that.
Do you know who wrote that or where that came from?
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, during Socrates' time, in the cultural sphere, like there are today, there were writers of comedic plays. Well, there was one particular play known as The Clouds that was written about Socrates that really made fun of him. That's one aspect of it. He's saying, I'm not really the way I was presented in that play you've probably all seen. But think about what this phrase might mean. A student of all things under the earth and in the sky. What kind of images does that summon for you? Think of Greek mythology. Think of their society at this time. Heaven in the underworld, which should be connected to their religious beliefs, right? And their religious system. Basically, what Socrates is denying here is that he's been a heretic. Back then, if someone had said something like this to you, something like these words, it would have summoned connotations and associations with something like witchcraft and the occult and studying things that shouldn't be studied, like forbidden things or dark things. He's denying here that he's been a heretic, that he offends the gods, and that he doesn't believe in them, or he doesn't respect them. Because presumably, only somebody who didn't respect the gods or didn't respect God with a capital G would start looking into the occult and things like that and start researching that and trying to figure out how that all works. Because as we know, the gods and God don't like that, right? They say, no, don't look at that stuff, right? Don't look at that alternative magic and things like that. On the contrary, Socrates is going to argue that he does believe in the gods and he does try to respect them. He's not somebody who's, researching occult magic and knowledge. And furthermore, he's not someone who, at least willingly, is trying to corrupt the youth. So after some of these general preliminary remarks, he goes on to address the specific charges against him that have been brought by this character known as Miletus. Because Miletus has said some nasty things about Socrates. In fact, Socrates ends up in this dialogue speaking not only to the jury, but questioning Miletus specifically, going up to him and asking him questions. Trying to put on a good defense of his own life and actions. Well, what are some of the things Miletus has said about him and accused him of? Say that again? Corrupting the youth. Very good. He's corrupting the youth. He's turning them into bad people who question the gods and the laws of our city. Well, how does Socrates respond to this? Let this suffice as a defense against the charges of my earlier accusers. After this, I shall try to defend myself against Meletus specifically, the good and patriotic man as he says he is, and my later accusers. As these are a lot of different accusers, let us again take up their sworn deposition. It goes something like this. Socrates is guilty of corrupting the young and of not believing in the gods in whom the city believes, but in other spiritual things. Such is their charge. Let us examine it point by point. He says that I am guilty of corrupting the young, but I say that Meletus is guilty of dealing frivolously with serious matters, of irresponsibly bringing people into court, and of professing to be seriously concerned with things about none of which he has ever really cared about. And I shall try to prove that this is so. Come here and tell me, Meletus. Surely you consider it of the greatest importance that our young men be as good as possible. Could someone stand in for Meletus for me? Perfect. Indeed, I do, is how he responds. Okay, come then. Tell these men who improves them. You obviously know, in view of your concern, you say you have discovered the one who corrupts them, namely me. And you bring me here and accuse me to these men. Come inform them and tell them who it is. You see, Meletus, that you are silent and know not what to say. Does this not seem shameful to you and a sufficient proof of what I say, that you have not been concerned with any of this? Tell me, my good sir, who improves our young men? That is not what I am asking. But what person who has the knowledge of the laws to begin with? How do you mean, Meletus? Are these able to educate the young and improve them?
Certainly.
All of them, or some but not others?
All of them.
Very good, by Hera. You mention a great abundance of benefactors. But what about the audience? Do they improve the young or not?
They do too.
What about the members of the council?
The counselors also.
But Meletus, what about the assembly? Do members of the assembly corrupt the young, or do they all improve them?
They improve.
All the Athenians, it seems to you, make the young into fine good men, except me, and I alone corrupt them. Is that what you mean?
That is most definitely what I mean.
You condemn me to a great misfortune. Tell me, does this also apply to horses, do you think? That all men improve them, and one individual corrupts them? Or is quite the contrary true? One individual is able to improve them, or very few, namely the horse breeders, whereas the majority, if they have horses and use them, corrupt them. Is that not the case, Meletus, both with horses and other animals? Of course it is. Whether you and Anytus say so out loud. It would be a very happy state of affairs if only one person corrupted our youth, while the others improved them. Okay, so how does Socrates respond to that accusation that he is corrupting the youth?
Pointing out how he views everyone else as benefiting them and basically singling himself out as the supposed soul corrupter.
Yeah. And does that seem likely to you?
No.
What argument does he use?
That one person cannot ruin horses while everyone else improves them.
Does that sound true to you? What does it seem to be more likely to you? That one person is corrupting all the people you think are bad, or many people are corrupting the people you think are bad?
Many people.
Is it easier for one person or many people to improve someone? It stands to reason, perhaps, that, look, one person isn't corrupting all of the youth. That doesn't make sense, right? Rather, it seems like there's a bunch of people that are doing this. It's highly unlikely that I alone am corrupting them. Just as with horses, only a few people have the knowledge and skills to improve them. The vast majority of people, well, they would corrupt a horse if they got their hands on it, right? And were charged with taking care of it. Do you know what to do with a horse? How to make a horse better? I sure as hell don't, right? So perhaps the same applies to human beings. Okay, well, what does Socrates go on to say? Could I have someone again be Miletus? You'll just be reading like that, and that, and that. Perfect. You have made it sufficiently obvious, Miletus, that you have never had any concern for our youth. You show your indifference clearly, that you have given no thought to the subjects about which you bring me to trial. And by Zeus, Miletus, tell us also whether it is better for a man to live among good or wicked fellow citizens. Answer, my good man, for I'm not asking a difficult question. Do not the wicked do some harm to those who are ever closest to them, whereas good people benefit them?
Certainly.
And does the man exist who would rather be harmed than benefited by his associates? Answer, my good sir, for the law orders you to answer. Is there any man who wants to be harmed?
Of course not.
Come now. Do you accuse me here of corrupting the young and making them worse deliberately or unwillingly?
Deliberately.
Or we might say involuntarily. What follows, Miletus? Are you so much wiser at your age than I am at mine, that you understand that wicked people always do some harm to their closest neighbors, while good people do them good? But I have reached such a pitch of ignorance that I do not realize this. Namely, if I make one of my associates wicked, I run the risk of being harmed by him, so that I do such a great evil deliberately, as you say? I do not believe you, Miletus, and I do not think anyone else will. Either I do not corrupt the young, or if I do, it is unwillingly. And if this is the case, you are lying. Now, if I corrupt them unwillingly, the law does not require you to bring people to court for such unwilling wrongdoings, but to get a hold of them privately, to instruct them and exhort them privately. For clearly, if I learn better, I shall cease to do what I am doing unwillingly. You, however, have avoided my company and were unwilling to instruct me. But you bring me here, where the law requires one to bring those who are in need of punishment, not of instruction. Okay, so what does Miletus say? Socrates is making the youth worse deliberately. How does Socrates respond to this?
He's like, why don't I like an opportunity, like if people hurt the people closest to them, he's gonna get hurt.
Right. Do you want to hang out with bad people? Why not? How so?
Bad people affect you.
Yeah. What might they do to you, you
They
know?
might harm you.
Yeah, maybe they'll extort you to do something for them, right? Maybe they'll take your money, right? Maybe they'll bring pain or suffering to your family. Maybe they'll try to blackmail you, right? Would anybody willingly hang out with people that would harm them in these ways? No, and that's Socrates' point, right? He says, if I am corrupting the youth, I certainly am not doing it willingly. It would be irrational for me to do that. Why? Because it could blow back at me. If I make all of you worse and I have to continue hanging out with you, right? That could harm me, so I'm not going to try to make you worse. So he says if he's corrupting them at all, he's not corrupting them willingly. And so what? So he's not corrupting them willingly. What does that have to do with this case?
Because if he's doing it unwillingly, he's not going to court. They need to teach him, not condemn him.
Right. Socrates, and presumably everybody else, recognizes that you bring people to court, generally, for bad things that they do deliberately. That's why you punish them. That's why you try to get things right. Make them pay their due. So if Socrates is corrupting them, and he's doing it unwillingly, he certainly doesn't deserve to be indicted for it and go to prison or be killed. Rather, the rational thing to do would be not to bring him to court, but to give him private instruction. So he basically says, look, I shouldn't even be here. This is silliness. Good. Okay, but that's only part of Meletus' accusation, right? What Socrates is being charged with. What else is he being charged with? Piety? Impiety, right. Good. He's being impious. He's offending the gods. He's talking bad about them. He's convincing people not to believe in them. In fact, the charges go so far to say Socrates is guilty of not believing in the gods and being a heretic and offending them. Of course, Socrates is going to have something to say about this too, right? Well, let's see what he says. Declan, could I get you to be Meletus now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Does any man, Meletus, believe in human activities who does not believe in humans? Make him answer, and not again and again create a disturbance. Does any man who does not believe in horses believe in horsemen's activities? Or in flute-playing activities, but not in flute players? No, my good sir, no man could. If you are not willing to answer, I will tell you in these men. Answer the next question, however. Does any man believe in spiritual activities who does not believe in spirits?
No.
Okay, what's the argument here? What's the logic?
You can't believe in something, like you can't believe on the consequences if you don't believe on like the. You can't believe on the conclusion if you don't believe in the premise.
Sure. That's one way of putting it, yeah.
You can't believe in something that comes from the thing you don't believe in originally.
Right. Yeah. Does it make sense to believe, let's say, in running if there were no such thing as runners? There wouldn't be any running if there were no runners, right? Okay. Thank you for answering, if reluctantly, when these gentlemen made you. Now you say that I believe in spiritual things and teach about them, whether new or old, but at any rate, spiritual things according to what you say, and to this you have sworn in your deposition. But if I believe in spiritual things, I must inevitably believe in spirits. Is that not so? It is indeed. I shall assume that you agree, as you do not answer. Do we not believe spirits to be either gods or the children of gods? Yes or no?
Of course.
Then, since I do believe in spirits, as you admit, if spirits are gods, this is what I mean when I say you speak in riddles and in jest. As you state that I do not believe in gods, and then again that I do, since I do believe in spirits. If, on the other hand, the spirits are children of the gods, bastard children of the gods by nymphs or some other mothers, as they are said to be, what man would believe in children of the gods to exist, but not gods? That would be just as absurd as to believe the young of horses and donkeys, namely mules, to exist, but not to believe in the existence of horses and donkeys. You must have made this deposition, Meletus, either to test us, or because you were at a loss to find any true wrongdoing of which to accuse me. There is no way in which you could persuade anyone of even small intelligence that it is possible for one and the same man to believe in spiritual, but not also in divine things. And then again for that same man to believe neither in spirits, nor in gods, nor in heroes. So, How does Socrates defend himself against this accusation of not believing in the gods?
He's saying Luis one has no ground because he's saying that Socrates does like believe in spirits, but it's not possible to believe in spirits unless you also first believe in gods instead of the offspring of gods.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not an atheist, bro. I believe in spirits, in gods, and all that. Hence why he accuses Meletus of either, bringing silly charges against him to test Socrates' intelligence, or the implication is that Meletus is doing something unjust here and not true, accusing Socrates of something that, isn't true. Okay, could I get someone to read just this paragraph in the middle? He gives one more response. Yeah.
I do not think men of Athens that it requires a prolonged defense to prove that I am not guilty of the charges. That Miller's deposition of this is sufficient. On the other hand, you know that what I said earlier is true, that I am very unpopular with many people. This will be my undoing. If I am undone, not Miller's, or Antony's, but the slanders and envy of many people. This has destroyed many other good men and will, I think, continue to do so. There is no danger that it will stop at me.
Okay. So what does he say here? Why is he here in the first place? Why is this happening to him?
It's that they don't like him, and there's a pattern of them prosecuting people that they generally don't like, and because of that, he sees a pattern that's going to repeat itself if they don't stop right now.
Yeah. Socrates, for some, is not a good popular guy, right? They dislike him. They want to see him go down. He says, I'm here not because I'm guilty of anything, but because I'm innocent and unpopular. That's really why I'm here. The people who want to see me go down, that is why I'm here today. And he offers one more little point in his defense. This is the truth of the matter, men of Athens. Wherever a man has taken a position that he believes to be best, or has been placed by his commander, there he must, I think, remain and face danger, without a thought for death or anything else, rather than disgrace. It would have been a dreadful way to behave, men of Athens, if at Potidaea and Amphipolis and Delium I had, at the risk of death like anyone else, remained at my post where those you had elected to command had ordered me, and then when the god ordered me, as I thought and believed, to live the life of a philosopher, to examine myself and others, I had abandoned my post for fear of death or anything else. That would have been a dreadful thing. And then I might truly have justly been brought here for not believing that there are gods, disobeying the oracle, fearing death, and thinking I was wise when I was not. To fear death, gentlemen, is no other than to think oneself wise when one is not. To think one knows what one does not know. No one knows whether death may be the greatest of all blessings for a man, yet men fear it as if they knew that it was the greatest of evils. And surely it is the most blameworthy ignorance to believe that one knows what one does not know. It is perhaps on this point and in this respect, gentlemen, that I differ from the majority of men. And if I were to claim that I am wiser than anyone in anything, it would be in this, that as I have no adequate knowledge of things in the underworld, so I do not think that I have that. I do know, however, that it is a wicked and shameful thing to do wrong, to disobey one's superior, be he God or man. I shall never fear or avoid things of which I do not know, whether they may not be good rather than the things that I know to be bad. Even if you acquitted me now and did not believe Anytus, who said to you that either I should not have been brought here in the first place, or that now I am here, you cannot avoid executing me. For if I should be acquitted, your sons would practice the teachings of Socrates and all be thoroughly corrupted. If you said to me in this regard, Socrates, we do not believe Anytus now, we acquit you, but only on the condition that you spend no more time on this investigation of yours, philosophy, and do not practice it, and if you are caught doing so, you will die. If, as I say, you were to acquit me on those terms, I would say the following to you. Men of Athens, I am grateful, I am your friend, but I will obey the God rather than you. And as long as I draw breath and am able, I shall not cease to practice philosophy, to exhort you, and in my usual way to point out to any one of you whom I happen to meet. He doesn't say it directly here, but Socrates makes an implication. Why is he going to continue to do philosophy, even if they threaten him with death for doing it?
Because the unexamined life or life without philosophy is not worth living, according to him.
True. True. Yes. Rather follow the God's orders. Explain that.
Because of, he thinks that he's meant for philosophy. He'd rather listen to that than the people telling him to stop doing philosophy. Rather die than stop.
Yes, good.
He finds them unjust, thus doesn't want to follow them.
That is also true, yes. He thinks that what they're doing to him is unjust. The implication here is that, well, Socrates is saying, what I've been doing, I believe it's been a mission from the gods. I believe I'm acting on the God's will. I don't have to look any further than the oracle and my daimonion to know that. And you're telling me to reject that mission that I have from the gods? That would be heretical. Right? Yeah. For sure. Yeah. He defends his way of life here as being something that the gods want him to do. Good sir, you are an Athenian, a citizen of the greatest city with the greatest reputation for both wisdom and power. Are you not ashamed of your eagerness to possess as much wealth, reputation, and honors as possible, while you do not care for nor give thought to wisdom or truth, or the best possible state of your soul? This is what I would say to them. Then if one of you disputes this and says he does care, I shall not let him go at once or leave him, but I shall question him, examine him and test him. And if I do not think he has attained the goodness that he says he has, I shall reproach him, because he attaches little importance to the most important things, and greater importance to inferior things. I shall treat him in this way, anyone I happen to meet, young and old, citizen and stranger. And more so, the citizens, because you are more kindred to me. Be sure that this is what the God orders me to do. And I think there is no greater blessing for the city than my service to the God. For I go around doing nothing but persuading both young and old among you, not to care for your body or your wealth, in preference to or as strongly as for the best possible state of your soul? As I say to you, wealth does not bring about excellence, but excellence makes wealth and everything else good for men, both individually and collectively. Socrates doesn't just reject the accusations against him, he puts up an impassioned defense for his way of life. Because he thinks that people have the wrong priorities. We shouldn't prioritize material things like wealth and power. What's more important is the state of our souls, whether we are good and just and wise. And because Socrates believes these are the right things to pursue, that he's living rightly, even if he is accused or threatened death for doing this, he's not going to give it up. Because he believes it is the right thing to do. Okay, let's just take a little break here. Let's give you 10 minutes. Come back at 1:13. We'll finish this up, all right? Well, Socrates put up, I think, a fine defense of his life and his actions. But what happens to him? He dies, so what does that mean? He was condemned. His argument was not effective. They found him guilty. They still indicted him of these charges. A matter of about 31 votes in like a sea of hundreds. So really, he almost persuaded them, but he was not successful. What we get in the rest of the apology is, well, perhaps some things that Socrates said that would have led them to find him guilty and convict him. Because at one point, when he's asked to, well, if death is not the appropriate punishment for you, what should we do to you? He says, well, really, because of all the great things I've done, you should give me free meals for life. That probably didn't help his case. They were probably angry at him for that. But he does something unprecedented here. He turns to addressing the jury after the ruling, which is not something that happened in cases like this back in ancient Athens. This was unprecedented. And he has a few parting words for them and some scathing remarks as well. Rather than accept the charges, he continues to reject the accusations. He says he's not been living an immoral life. He's not been corrupting the youth. He's not been heretical. Yet, he leaves them with some, well, words that should prompt reflection for all of us. He again states that he would rather die than live wickedly. He believes he is on a just and pious mission from the gods to live a life of philosophy, to question, to seek wisdom and virtue. He thinks probably a lot of those members of the jury and other people in Athens are not seeing things properly. Many of you earlier at the start of class said that death is something that you're most afraid of, right? This is the way probably the majority of people feel, right? Socrates says, you don't have your head screwed on right. Death is not something that should give you this paralyzing or crippling fear. Your fear of death should not rule your life. On the other hand, there's something that you should fear even more than death. Because what's worse than dying? Well, being dead and lost while you are alive. Living a wicked, unjust, unexamined life. That is worse. Because if you are not walking in the truth, if you're not improving yourself and trying to learn, if you're not reaching for and trying to embody what's good, are you really living? Are you really being the person and all you can be that you can be? No, he says, it is much more difficult to avoid wickedness than death. Death comes easily. Wickedness and living an unexamined, unvirtuous life, that is much more difficult. And so we should have that in our minds too as we walk our various paths. Not fearing death above all else, he says, but fearing not living a good life and not being as wise and good as we can be. Because that's what ultimately matters. He isn't cruel to them, though. These people who just convicted him of these crimes and have sentenced him to death. He kind of accepts the ruling while he still denies the crimes. He doesn't fight against it. He says, okay, well, this is what you voted for what's to happen to me. All right, well, then that's what's going to happen. He mentions that perhaps this is as it should be. For when he was giving his speech earlier, when he's speaking now, and when he received the ruling, his daimonion did not step in to do anything else differently. So he thinks perhaps that this ruling was the will of the gods. That for some reason, he is meant to go to his grave as a result of living like this. But he leaves them with an argument to help motivate these claims. That we shouldn't fear death above all else. He says, look, the way I see things is this. Death is either the end of our consciousness and perception, eternal darkness, we just disappear. We're just gone, never to experience anything again. Or death means our consciousness or our soul goes to a different place, and we get to keep on living. He says, either way you look at it, if you take one or two, death should be seen as a blessing. Why should it be seen as a blessing if death is the end for us? If there's nothing else after it? It's peaceful? Yeah. Okay, so you think the flip side would be worse?
Because the world's always going to be corrupt, and he doesn't want to live in that.
The world is always going to be corrupt. Is your life filled with suffering sometimes? Do you experience pain? disappointment, anxiety, depression. Socrates says if death really is the end, we just disappear. Then it's a blessing because it will be an end to our suffering. So if you look at it that way, death is a good thing. It's not to be feared. It's to be welcomed because it means we will no longer feel any pain. We won't have to worry about our grades anymore or making sure people like us or making sure our parents are proud of us. We won't have to worry about anything anymore. On the other hand, what if death isn't the end? What if our consciousness or our soul does continue to exist after we die? Why might it be a blessing then? Yeah.
I think he said he doesn't meet his heroes and that would be one of them.
Good. If death isn't the end and we get to keep on living, well, then it should be seen as a blessing too, because we get to hang out in the afterlife and talk to cool people and do cool shit. A much better place, you might think, than where we're living now and what we have to suffer now. So Socrates says he's not going to be afraid of his imminent death. Either way he looks at it, it is a blessing for him. Now, if many of you are Christian, you might think Socrates is on to something here, right? The Greeks, too, had their own versions, kind of heaven and hell. And Socrates says, well, yeah, after you die, your soul is going to be judged based on how you live, and that's going to determine where you'll go. But that's fine. Just pursue virtue. Pursue justice. Try to be a good person. The gods will judge you fairly, and you will be able to have an awesome time in the afterlife. His words are worth reflecting on. If this is a good argument, then death is not something that we should fear or really worry about. It isn't something that, well, should paralyze us or prevent us from truly living. It didn't prevent Socrates back from living the life that he thought was good. The life that he thought was in line with the God's will. So I hope it doesn't hold you back either. Nevertheless, we're still left with a bunch of questions. Is Socrates right about this? Was the court ruling just? Is Socrates actually guilty of some terrible crimes here? Well, I'll let you try to work out that among yourselves. It has been said that the study of philosophy is learning to die well. And I think that Socrates does a good job of embodying that kind of way of life. Socrates lived according to his conscience. He did not fear death above all else. He did not try to run from it. He accepted it graciously. So, for the rest of class, if you could, please answer the questions on that sheet. Do some of your own thinking and your own reflecting. See what you think about the message that Plato is trying to give us here. Was what happened to Socrates just? Is he right not to fear death? Go ahead, think about it a little bit.